up there because it'll be figured out afterwards. So just to introduce myself and Megan, we're the two grants coordinators for Farm to School BC. My name's Roanne Whitacase, and I am one of the grants coordinators here. And then I'll let Megan quickly give a hello for herself.
Hi, everyone. It's lovely to see you all. My name is Megan Vesley. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm also one of the grants coordinators with Farm to School BC.
Thanks, Megan. And I just also would love to acknowledge that I am joining today from the traditional territories of the Lheidli T'enneh of the Takel speaking peoples up in what is currently called Prince George, BC, so up in north central BC. And I will pass it on to Megan.
Thanks, Ro. And I'm joining today from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations in what is commonly known as Vancouver, BC. So a little overview. We're kind of in the midst already of our intros. We'll also do a bit of an intro to Farm to School as a program and our team. We'll go into some details on the Farm to School BC grants, and as well as taking some time to go through some examples of ideas and past projects. We will have some time for any questions and shares, so please, as you think of questions, be popping them into the chat and we'll answer those later on. And then we'll have a couple more resources and a closing out for our session today. So a little overview of Farm to School BC, the program. You can kind of see our three pillars here. We strive to bring healthy, local, and sustainable food into schools across British Columbia. We also provide students with hands-on learning opportunities that develop food literacy. And we strengthen local food system by striving to enhance school and community connectedness. Farm to School BC is a program of the Public Health Association of BC, supported by the province of British Columbia. And we have been operating since 2007, so over 17 active years of supporting schools across the province, focusing on school districts, classrooms. There's been a lot of students reached by this program specifically, so we're so excited that you're here to find out a little bit more about our grant program. I believe we have a couple of our team on the call today, so get them to give you a wave. You can also see myself and Roanne on this slide here. So in addition to helping manage our grants, I'm also the Vancouver Coastal Regional Coordinator, and Roanne is the Northern Regional Coordinator. We have a couple others around so that we are able to support province-wide. See a little bit of our map, looking at our regions here. So these mirror the Health Authority regions, so Vancouver Coastal Health, Interior Health, all of those. And you can see which school districts kind of fall under each section here. So if you're ever not sure where you fall, you can email anyone on our team. The one that you guys on this call will be connected with a lot is the grants, and we're always happy to connect you with the regional coordinator. It kind of specifically focuses on your region as well.
Thanks for the introduction, Megan. So now to start speaking to our grants specifically. So they're open now and they close November 22nd. And some details on the grants here. So key points to share. So the grants this year will go up to $1,000 per grant. And Megan, if you wouldn't mind skipping to the next slide. Thank you, thank you. So we have approximately funding for 40 grants to go out across the province at $1,000. So 50% of the grants will be reserved for rural, remote, and First Nations schools. And well, the more definition in what those definitions are specifically to that. So you can apply up to the very last minute on the November 22nd of 11:59 p.m. So grantees will be notified in December, and you'll both receive a notification whether you are funded or not. And funds will arrive in January after the holiday break. And so on the next list here, so we acknowledge that this is $1,000. So with that money, it can be bite-sized goals that you're applying for within your program, but there'll be no shortage of big impacts can come out of this money being invested. So these grants can be aimed at initiating small-scale projects you're starting in your school or making enhancements to existing programs. So we'll speak to some examples of what this can look like later on here. And so we have different ways that you can apply for our application this year. So we have our online text-based application form that's through our website, and it's a portal that leads you through different screens. And when you're doing that, you can't in our program save as you go along. So we do have a reference application. You can get everything ready to go with beforehand, which we'll speak to in the next slide. But we also are offering this year, you can meet with Megan and I to apply through a conversation. So that can be by phone, or we can line up a Zoom meeting where we'll just go through the and we can have more of a conversation. And we're also offering that you can upload a video. So we have a video submission guide with that you can follow, and you can record a video and upload that for your application. So on the next slide here, we just kind of list some of these documents and tools that support you through these different forms of applying. So we have the grant application guide. So on our website, this is kind of the grants landing page section. So we have a lot of details here that go into more depth of some of our guidelines and some of the definitions and different things that we have requirements for the grant. So that can be a really good place to always go back to reference, and that has links to go further into applying. So on the application, when you're going to apply, we do have the reference form with all the questions there listed. And then we also have the video submission form I spoke to that is set up to be a little bit more conversational. And for the phone or Zoom meetings, I just want to highlight that if you do wish to apply that way, we have a deadline of November 8th to request to line that up. So those can still take place a little bit further up to the deadline, but just so we have time to book those in. And the last thing we just want to really highlight here is the requirements for this funding is just one final report that is due the next year. So this grant timeline window for using the funding is the year. And so this final report, when you, if you do receive funding, you will be provided access to a grant folder, which will have in it the report right from the get-go. So you can read it and see what the requirements are. You can engage in this report throughout the year if that works well. And if you're done your programming before January 2026, you're welcome to also fill it out and submit it and keep in contact with us that way. And then a few more key details here. So we did speak to at the beginning here that we are dedicating 50% of our grants to the rural, remote, and First Nations. So just the definitions for these are set. The rural is communities with a population less than 20,000. Remote is a population less than 1,000. And the First Nations school, this was a definition we tabbed from the First Nations Education Steering Committee. This is their definition of a First Nations school, which is a school on reserve and operated and administered by one or more First Nations in BC, and they could be providing education to one or more of at the kindergarten, K to 12 levels, and it also includes First Nations independent schools. And so for our eligibility for this application, we only have three main things. So it's that you're a K to 12 school in BC, so that can be within a school district, an independent school, or a First Nation school as defined above. You cannot have received a grant last year. That's our only kind of stipulation in previous funding to have been received by your school. And you must have completed a final report. So if you did receive funding in the years before, prior to the 2023-2024 grant cycle, you just have to have completed your final report to have wrapped up that project to receive funding this year. And if you aren't sure on any of those things for your school, you can just email Megan and I, and we can confirm those details for you. And then we also have our general FAQ page you can always visit as well, where we do outline some questions that come in quite frequently. But again, if you don't find the answer to the question that you have, just don't hesitate at all to reach out to request to chat by email, or even to a phone call or a Zoom call to talk about your questions. Now pass it on to Megan.
Thank you very much. So as you're kind of starting to plan and think about your project, I wanted to highlight a couple major considerations that we kind of see come up time and time again. So the first thing is make sure that If necessary for your project, you're checking on approvals from your school and school districts. That could be ensuring you have the space, placement, any ongoing maintenance that your project needs. Make sure that you kind of get ahead of that by checking in with your administration. If you need to check at a district level, check that. Some school districts in BC do require district approval for any school to receive any kind of grant funding. So just make sure that you have kind of all of those things done before you submit your project. Keeping your project with tangible outcomes. I think a lot of the time it's really easy to kind of get really excited and have these big grand visions, and those can be so fun to create kind of a longer timeline for, but keeping in mind that this is kind of a 1-year project with $1,000 budget if you're just using the Farm to School grant. Make sure that you're keeping things at an achievable level, as well ensuring that your timeline aligns with the reporting period. So as Ro mentioned, reporting is due January 2026. So make sure that any activities that this project will kind of touch on can be wrapped up by then. If you're planning your project and it finishes within the school year that you receive funding, so by the end of like June 2025, that's also totally okay. As Rose said, you can submit your reporting at any time during that, but making sure that you have something that can kind of like be wrapped up and you can show off by the time the reporting period is done. Also making sure that your budget is aligned with current prices. So make sure you're taking a few minutes when you're kind of looking at what you need to check the prices of wood, of shovels, of the dehydrator that you want, because it is no fun kind of guesstimating and then getting sticker shock when you actually go. I know, especially if you're doing a building project, those costs can have been quite variable over the past few years. So making sure that you're checking in what prices are currently. And also with budget, if you do receive a Farm to School BC grant, up to 50% of that can be spent on food and 50% could be spent on an honorarium. It doesn't need to be spent on either of those things, but ensuring that you're kind of within those. Yeah, Ro, do you have something to add there?
Yeah. I also just wanted to add that we're also really aware that like circumstances can change, including the prices of things or delays that can take place for a planned project for many different reasons. And we're here to really want to support your project. So if these things come into place and you have any questions, just again reach out and connect with us, because typically any budget adjustments under $500, as long as it's still within the scope of your project or program investing into your project, it's pretty much well, you can go ahead with that, but you can, yeah, again, just shoot us an email just to clarify that and confirm that it's a go. But otherwise, we will work to support you into trying to help where we can to make the project move forward or shift where your funding can go if it can no longer align with your initially planned budget.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Ro. Yes, we definitely are super flexible. And at the same time, it's good to check what current prices are, but when you're submitting your application, there's no need necessarily to really get down to like the nitty gritty or be kind of like, yeah, weighing between a few cents of different options. As long as you have a kind of an idea of what things will be, probably good to go. So on that, we wanted to go over a whole bunch of different kind of options and inspiration of what these projects can look like. So the first one that often comes to mind for educators is school gardens. And we want to acknowledge that school gardens can come in many, many forms. A lot of time we think of like a traditional food production garden, which is a lot of fun to do with students. But there's so many other options. So an explorer garden that really focuses on like learning and playing, or a sensory garden. We've had a lot of schools that have really engaged in kind of indigenous gardens. Native plant gardens, kind of medicinal gardens can all be really cool learning opportunities. An outdoor classroom space, so kind of incorporating, you know, a garden into a bigger learning environment can be very cool. Pollinator gardens are always fun and can be a little bit easier sometimes. You don't need to worry about the food production side or harvesting the same way. And we always like seeing some happy bees in the area. Or even really orienting your garden for seed saving, which can be a good problem solver because a lot of crops kind of come in during the summer when students are out. So if you're developing and thinking about your garden, you can always focus on that seed saving portion in the fall as well. Our grants are pretty open to cover a lot of things under the umbrella of food literacy. And a big part of that is also kind of looking at what we do with the food. How do we get the food to the kitchen? And then what do we do with it in the kitchen? So I also want to acknowledge that this grant can support activities that involve gardening, foraging, any kind of cooking activities with your classroom, food processing, like dehydrating, making smoothies, all those sorts of things. Different food programming and food celebrations. I know I've talked to a few schools who have really successful kind of like, that become a school tradition to do a big harvest celebration with a big salad bar at the end of the year. And it's something that the whole school looks forward to. And now parents coming into that school are like excited to get involved and volunteer with that. Those are all really great examples of things that this funding could be used to support. As well, if you're looking at opportunities that aren't just in your school or in your classroom, we love to support getting students connected with other community members, whether that looks like supporting a farm field trip, visiting community gardens or food processing spaces, connecting with the community in other ways. We've had successful projects that have partnered with seniors centers, for example, or anything else that you can think of that connects your students to the land or foraging. And then lastly, I mentioned, or Ro mentioned before, one of us mentioned that up to 50% of the grant can be spent on an honorarium. So that can go towards bringing in different experts and knowledge holders, either to your classroom or going to visit them. So that could look like having an Indigenous knowledge keeper or elder come and teach your class about some of the plants that are around your space. Farmers visiting and helping or teaching, other mentorship supports, bringing in folks that conduct different indoor or outdoor activities or workshops with your class, or even having chefs or canning experts come in, which can be a very fun event and can even involve more of your community. You know, I think that parents can also be such a cool resource to come in and kind of introduce some activities that they can do, like canning or food preservation. And then lastly, I know that this is a great curriculum connection and something that a lot of us have really been taking some time to unpack, is how we can bring Indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing in a respectful way into the classroom and acknowledge how important that is, especially in, you know, being grounded in BC and where these lands that we get to enjoy, how they're taken care of. So we've seen some really incredible examples of that integration, having Indigenous gardens and food forests on school properties, connecting to the land and foraging, food preserving and smokehouses, bringing in cultural language or signage. So having maybe a native plant garden that really goes into the traditional or native name and has, you know, a visual of that plant as well can be a very cool learning opportunity. And then again, bringing in knowledge keepers or elders to help educate your students in these projects. A few more tangible programs in action, indoor microgreens and garden smoothies. Beekeeping is one that comes up every now and again. That's always very exciting to find a community partner organization. We have some schools that do pit cooks on an annual basis, which is another amazing kind of tradition to have at the school level. Salad bars always do well. On the coast here, on the island, we're very lucky to be so close to the ocean, so being able to integrate that. Seaweed can make incredible lesson plans, or getting to harvest that. Seed saving or composting in worm bins are always very exciting and a bit of a different take on a classroom pet. We also have a couple specific examples from our past couple years that we wanted to highlight. So I'll pass it off to Ro to talk about the first one.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Yeah, we just wanted to highlight a few schools that did receive $1,000 grant from us in the past, and the amazing projects that they created out of that. So this school here, the Homa Elementary School in the Vancouver coastal region. So this school used the $1,000 grant to significantly boost their existing cooking program. So this is a really good example of how impactful that using the money to really amplify an existing program can be. So what they did is they purchased more cooking and serving materials so that for each class. So this made it so that they didn't need to share and alternate the uses of all of this equipment and materials. And so what happened with that is more students can now participate in their daily cooking activities. They also invested in a new camp stove and a dehydrator for their program. So this expanded the ways that the students could cook and preserve, and created opportunities for them to have year-round food engagement, even as they shifted into the winter months. So kind of they already had an existing garden and ways to grow and harvest the foods. It was a great way for them to invest in more of that hands-on and that season extension and preservation of the foods for more ongoing learning and eating and exposure to the foods in the winter months. And then for the next school example here, yeah, so the Census Houston School, this is the West Bank First Nations in the interior region. So this school used their grant to purchase new supplies to maintain their existing 5 grow towers that they had invested in previously. So each classroom, with the investment of this funding, they were now able to enjoy their own tower gardens because they could spread them out a little bit more. So the classes were able to grow lettuce that went into their school lunch program. And they were able to now experiment with different crops. They did peppers, they drew strawberries, okra and broccoli as just a few examples. And the schools really reflected on that the students took pride in like planting and nurturing and harvesting all the things that they grew in the grow towers, and that they just, yeah, developed a deeper appreciation for the efforts that took to require the food. So it really helped them to keep reinvigorate and keep going with the having the grow towers at their school and take it to that next level.
Thanks.
For the next school example we have here for, oh, sorry, yeah, Megan, your turn.
I was gonna say you can keep going with it. We have Talcanuit in the interior region as well in School District 53, which used their From to School grant to also add a dehydrator to their school kitchen to enhance both their indoor and outdoor growing spaces. Each week, students from grades 1 to 7 spend time with an outdoor learning teacher, working and learning in the garden, while students in grades 5 to 7 regularly use the school kitchen to develop their food preparation skills. These hands-on experiences have taught students valuable agricultural and culinary skills, culminating in the intermediate students preparing and serving meals for the entire school. So this was a really cool opportunity of, again, kind of enhancing an existing program and bringing in some new learning opportunities for students who are already serving their other students, and dehydrating just added a whole other layer of kind of food processing knowledge to that. So dishes like baked spaghetti squash, dehydrated apples, and kale chips showcase their use of fresh school-grown produce. And one thing I wanted to highlight with all of these different examples, because we get this question quite a bit, is kind of like, is it better to pick one project and really go for that? Or can I kind of have these funds to spend on a few different things? And we wanted to say yes to all of that. So you can see a couple of these examples already had an ongoing food program that this was used to bolster learning opportunities or bring in other equipment. Some projects we've seen in the past really do have kind of like, we're getting the funds to start this project, the project will be finished with these funds as kind of an entire thing itself, and that's great. Or sometimes these funds can be used to kind of like do a bit of a piecemeal, which might not be a full-on project. Maybe you need some new equipment for the garden, a class set of shovels, and that's great, as well as something in the kitchen, as well as using it to bolster a field trip. And that is totally fine. It is not like a stronger or weaker application if you don't necessarily have like a strong singular project. We love to kind of enhance all the bits and pieces of food literacy happening at your school. So whether that's like one focused project or kind of bolstering it all together, both are totally fine.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. And building on that, some examples have been schools that have had the different sections kind of going on with like indoor and the outdoor, and they've used the funding to find ways to bridge all of those together. And sometimes it has been investing in an honorarium of to increase like the knowledge of both the educators and the students in terms of making those connection points. Yeah, so many different amazing projects in unique ways that people have integrated the funding within their schools, because of course every project and program in school is unique to what they have going on and what their needs may be.
Yeah.
So
So we've run through a lot of information so far.
yeah.
So take some time to digest that. If you had any questions that came up during that, we're a little bit ahead of time, which is fabulous. We have lots of time for questions or shares. This is a great time if you have questions about anything we've talked about so far, anything else about our grant process or application. or also kind of a time that if you have ideas that you're excited about, this is a great place to share them. There's a lot of kind of shared knowledge and excitement in this group, both with our staff and the attendees. So we would also love to hear if you have anything that you're kind of thinking about for your project that you're still working on. And I see a hand up there for Delphina. Go for it. Delphina. One sec, no problem. I find sometimes when I'm on Zoom, the buttons move around, and I'm on Zoom like a lot, and sometimes they'll be where I expect, and sometimes I'm like, the hand up button has completely moved away. So no worries at all.
Davina, it shows you're unmuted now on our end.
I have to type my question, no problem. Can see, are we going to be able to get the slides to this presentation? Yes. The presentation is being recorded, and we'll also post all the information and slides to our website, as well as all the resources that we've touched on. A lot of the information that we've gone through is also included already in the grant application guide. So yes, all of this will be shared out with the attendees and posted on our website as well. All right.
Thanks,
Delphina,
Megan.
do you think you have your sound sorted out? Your hand's still up. Are you typing? I'm going to assume that you're typing. Okay. Sounds good. Grab Evelyn. Go for it.
Oh, actually, Megan, sorry. I see, Delphina, your question was already in the chat previously. Is your question regarding the delivery of a 5-week nutrition education curriculum for families? Yeah,
That
so
sounds really cool.
yeah, so a 5-week nutrition education, that'd be families of the school, so it would integrate the students and their families in the program. I'd probably just like to say right off the cuff that that sounds very interesting, and we definitely do like to support programs that, like Megan said, they might be wrapped around like a project specific thing where maybe there's opportunities for like food literacy teachings in and around it. So like building up to when that takes place or after, and like in student engagement in these different programs can be a really great way to kind of integrate applications in that form. So the only thing I would maybe highlight in this is again just like the 50% maximum that can go towards honorarium. So if you're wanting to invest in having that nutrition education come in externally, and then
Yeah,
if
Ro,
there's also any.
I see there was some extra information. The staff facilitator is covered. Grant will cover supplies, food, and incentives. Which is amazing that you have the staff facilitator covered on that.
So Megan, if you want to keep speaking to that, I'm just trying to find that in the chat here.
I know the chat's going a little busy, which is awesome. Yeah, I'd say for what you're looking at it covering, yeah, as long as it's within like kind of the guidelines of 50% honorarium or up to 50% with food, that sounds like it would be great. A great way to kind of engage your students and school community for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Delphine, also if you you can also shoot us an email and we can chat about it a little bit more in detail, one-on-one later if you like as well.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Madison, for starring the things. I see Cynthia. I'm going to apply for the grant to help purchase locally obtained salmon for the school's potlatch. That sounds incredible. So again, yeah, up to 50% can be used to purchase food. So that would be a great way to kind of tie in so many different learning opportunities. That's really exciting.
Yeah, and I'll also just highlight in reflecting that when there was a school in Rupert that did a pretty amazing, they got a $1,000 grant and they invested it into engaging the students in a potlatch that happened at the end of the school year. And so they did spend some of it on the food that the students helped prepare. And then the remaining, some went to honoraria and some went to some cooking and teaching activities that happened beforehand. And when I hosted it, the students, the school year leading up, were educated on the protocols for hosting the potlatch, and then students like hosted it with all their peers and served the food, and it was a really amazing thing that I was very grateful to be a part of, and just to see how well they did that, just as an example of that kind of a program.
Yeah, if you do receive a grant, also say we're always happy to kind of like check our notes back in previous projects if you're doing something similar, and help make those connections as well. Okay, I see Megan has a couple questions here. Can a parent be the primary applicant? We have a teacher for the secondary and admin approval. Ro, do you want to take that one?
Usually we do, the primary applicant should be the educator or the staff member tied and associated with the school, with the parent being the co-lead. And that's also just for like ongoing communications and that direct connection back to the school itself is why we like it. And then we also ask for to have administrative permission as well, a pre-approval before the application, and we ask to have that admin lead identified as well.
Yeah, so if possible, the primary applicant is an educator or someone that is working at the school, with the parent being a secondary. But yeah, if there's barriers to that, feel free to reach out to us as well, and we can talk about kind of like a specific case by case. Basic idea we have is to improve the structures in our outdoor classroom and garden space. Love feedback on this. Totally. That sounds great.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I mentioned before, kind of having a whole project that's encompassed in the grant, or using the grant to kind of bolster and build up what you have existing to kind of create a longer term sustainable system at your school. Either way is great. So yeah, with structures, I would say, again, the cost for those can add up really fast. So double check what you're looking at. I know we also are happy to help, like if you have something specific in mind, like send resources along, or companies that we've heard of success. So I would say, yeah, my only thing with building is watch the prices because they can go up really quickly. I know sometimes PACs can be really helpful with funding for that as well, if they can really directly see the impact to the school and the students.
Yeah, and Megan, you said you'd love feedback on this as well. So I would also invite you to send us an email if you'd want to connect and talk more specifically about the details of your project. And we can line up a meeting for that as well.
Lisa had a question. What about a grant for something that is simultaneously being applied for through another grant? That's totally okay, especially because we acknowledge that some projects are beyond the $1,000 scope. I believe in the application, there's a note that's kind of like, if you receive the farm to school grant and that would just be a smaller portion of a bigger project, just note that, just so we kind of have an idea of what sort of projects are out there. But yes, that's totally fine if you are kind of going for a couple different funding streams. And I think the other thing is, if by chance you are able to get even more funding than you expected, I don't know if I've met like a food literacy project that can't kind of be expanded out and built upon, because if you get more money than you needed. Yeah, so you're welcome to kind of be applying for other funding, or if you're hoping this would be part of a broader funding pot, that's totally okay.
Yeah, and Evelyn, you had your hand up for a question. Were you still ready to ask your question?
Yeah, I don't know if can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. I can I don't know if it will let me put my video on. I teach high school food studies, and I would love to be able to more frequently purchase locally grown fruits and vegetables from our farmers markets, and it oftentimes falls beyond the budget I already have. But I'm understanding that this particular grant is maybe not meant for purchasing ingredients as a primary piece. So I was just curious if you could maybe maybe expand on that or just let me know if that seems appropriate or not appropriate.
Yeah, so 50% of the funding, so $500 can go to the allocation of food. So if you're applying for the food to be integrated into like a broader food literacy or food teachings program, and you connect that to that and explain that within the application, then the purchase of food is definitely what we'd like to support to, like you said, make those teaching and those opportunities possible. So yeah, if you can in your application just explain what the overall plans are, and then with the additional 50%, a lot of people can spend that when they're applying for that hands-on food kind of food processing side. They'll often also invest in maybe some equipment that can help expand the students' engagement, or like honoraria to have an additional experience, such as bringing in a expert, such as like a canning expert or something of the sort, or the additional funds can also go to support like a field trip. So maybe that's field trips, of course, can be to farms, but they can also be to other food processing environments where they can continue to learn as well.
Mhm. I'll also add on, this isn't usually the problem that people have, but you don't need to apply for $1,000 either. If you're like, oh man, we really, I just need like $500 to like do this really, I want to bolster this program, bring in some food from a local farmer or anything like that. Don't feel like you need to like think of other things or put more on your plate in terms of planning to get it up to $1,000. The grant can be up to. So if whatever you have in mind doesn't cost $1,000, you can also apply for less money, and that is also totally okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I see a question asking for the email address. I can put this in the chat now, but we'll also share it at the end. So for anybody that is wanting to reach out and connect further, yeah, please do so.
Yeah, see Madison replied to that one, so thanks, Madison. I see that Mateo has a question, but first, Madison, you had your hand up earlier. Did I miss covering something that you wanted to? It's good now? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Lisa's question in the chat was a follow-up to Megan, so just wanted to pull your attention to that one regarding the Zoom phone interview, also needing the primary applicant to be an educator, or can it be a parent?
Thank you. Yes, I see that one now. So I mean, the video application or Zoom phone call would have to be with the school or admin primary applicant.
I would say if you're developing the program with the primary applicant who is the educator, the school admin, but if it's you yourself as the co-lead that might have the flexibility of time to be the one to jump on a Zoom call or a phone chat, that is totally okay.
Yeah, I think whoever is able to kind of like speak to the project and has the availability, if you end up doing a video application, you can kind of do a little introduction of the different members of the team. That's great too. Yeah, so it's usually that's primary, but if you're finding, if the knowledge of the program will also, the secondary is very involved in that. Yeah, as long as they're able to speak to the program, that would be fine. Mateo, you have your hand up. Thank you for waiting. What's your question? Mateo, I can see that you're speaking because your box is lighting up green, but I cannot hear words.
Still can't quite hear you, Mateo. If you want to throw your question in the chat, we can address it that way.
All right, we'll see. Sounds like Mateo's background noise might be in a car, so if that's the case, the typing might be difficult. Mateo, please don't endanger yourself to ask a question. Feel free to also email us after the presentation as well if whatever your question is doesn't get answered, or if you're not able to ask it right now. Mateo, can a club apply for the grant or only classes/school?
Are you referring to like an internal club of the school, or is this an external club, like part of an organization that's supporting the school. Because if it's a club of the school, then yes, I would definitely say they can go ahead and apply. An internal club with school, yep, definitely. I would say go ahead and really support this club with if they have the initiative and the drive to go ahead with this. I think that would be wonderful. We definitely had like school eco clubs or garden clubs be a part of these projects with their educator and school support. So yeah, definitely. And then I saw there was a question up there from Elsa before that one. Is soil appropriate? Our school garden is in desperate need and we have a large area. Is there a 50% of funds limit on that too? Soil is definitely appropriate for our grant. Yeah, a lot of people invest in soil to reinvigorate their gardens and to be able to plant new things within each year. So yep, I would definitely say soil is great, soil and compost and amendments. There is no 50% limit on purchase of soil and equipment and tools in that regard. Thanks, Megan. If you're still here, I just see your note. I look forward to your email coming in.
Ooh, Elsa, okay, you're in Vancouver. I actually might have a connection for you because I had a teacher reach out earlier this year asking the same thing for soil. So if you reach out to the grants email, I can follow up with you. I don't know what the pricing was, but I have a place in, I believe, Richmond that was referred to me for another school for good soil.
Yeah, and Megan just highlights a good example in action of that. We do have, of course, our Farm to School BC team of our regional coordinators who are also here to support. So if you do have questions and like that, specific questions about trying to access or locate materials or even connect to community if you're looking for support in action, if you have an idea or wanting to do a field trip or any of those things, definitely reach out. And you can start by reaching out to the grants email and we can connect you with the regional coordinator, or we also have our regional coordinator listed on our webpage. So we're all here to help.
Just put the link for that. So
yeah, we're all here to try to help your projects succeed. So we can also help in this planning stage as well.
Yeah, and actually kind of on that, let me see if any other questions come in. I can speak to a little bit, even if you don't receive a grant, we would still love to support you. Obviously, this info session here is specifically focused on our grants, but as you saw with our team, we have regional coordinators that support province-wide. So whether or not you receive a Farm to School BC grant, we're still happy to connect you with resources or local community members or other organizations if you're looking for things. Yeah, our team has a lot of knowledge. I believe one of the application questions for the grant is what kind of support could Farm to School offer? And that's in the context of a grant or not a grant as well. We're always trying to tailor our program offerings at Farm to School to best support educators and schools in food literacy. So yeah, we would love to fund all of you, but like it was mentioned earlier, we can fund probably about 40 grants this year. And if we are getting more applications than that, we would still love to keep in contact with educators that are excited about engaging in this and help whoever we can, even if it's not directly providing a grant this year.
Yeah, so I'll just call it for one more opportunity if anyone has any questions, otherwise, or just want to share neat projects that they've heard of schools in their success. You're welcome to also share that. Otherwise, we will shift gears back into a few slides where we're just going to highlight some of our program resources that we have that can also help in your planning stage and informing your project plan and your application.
Yeah,
so just going to highlight a few
keep things. Putting them into the chat as well.
Yeah, definitely. So for for our program, like we have our website, and Madison shared quite a few links from our website here, but on here you can find a lot of different resources. So all the way from ideas of projects and resource curriculum connection guides. And we also, a really significant resource that we have from our program is our school garden mentorship program. So we have in our school garden mentorship program and I think we have a slide for that down below, but it's has webinars that we've gone through for quite a few different years here that have had guest speakers from schools and community organizations and farmers. And it goes through kind of from the starting stage of planning for a school, and this is school garden specific, but from planning a school garden, gathering your school garden committee and team, and all the way down to there's workshop resources and all kinds of materials that can be very, very handy and helpful to you, and different webinar recordings there. And yeah, so our website also has a lot of different curriculum connections that you can explore that may be able to help you planning out your program for the year, how to connect it into the things you might be investing in. We also have our seasonal learning activities, which can be really great to explore for getting ready for when spring hits and everything the momentum moves forward so quickly. And then of course in fall, there can be a lot of really creative ways how to keep engaging in the garden for once things start shifting into that fall zone. And also for the winter, lots of different ideas for how to keep engagements going and exploring even outside in the gardens. Lots of great ideas there. For those that are exploring like Indigenous gardening or Indigenous teachings in and around their programs, we have our Learning from the Land Toolkit. It was developed and with multiple different schools and their programs of connecting to their Indigenous communities, and there are many different examples of different forms of gardens and different programs, and there's lists and resources of connecting to like Indigenous plant nurseries that might be in your location. There's also really specific activity guides for like Indigenous plant signage. So a really great resource to explore. We also have a new guide to growing a school farm.
Yeah. I'm going to interrupt you just because I see another question came into the chat that I want to answer while we're still in time, which is how are the funds distributed? Do you want me to take that one, or do you want to?
Oh, either way. The funds, are you referring to how are they distributed into allocation to all the people that apply? If that's the case, we definitely have invest in trying to support the province, because we do support province-wide. So with that, we have our different regions that align with the different health authorities. So our process is a form of a lottery process to add to that equity piece, but we do within that structure to ensure that there's 50% going to the First Nations rural remote schools, and after that also to try to equally disperse the funds across the province within the different health authority regions.
I see a clarification there. So for reimbursement or directly to products. So if you receive a grant, funds are dispersed through check directly to the school that applies. So you do get the funds up front, and then those are spent down from funds that are dispersed, through check to the school. Should be at the beginning of the new year if you receive them. No problem.
Thanks, Megan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was just going to highlight the next is the guide to growing a school farm. So I know a school farm is a very large project, not necessarily what a $1,000 grant would go towards, but this guide I think is very valuable in reading through and just conceptualizing some of those, like getting to that stage. But there's also just really handy things to reflect on that I think can be quite relatable to even a smaller garden in terms of things you might think about and plan for sustainability. So it's a really great guide to explore. And I'll also just highlight, we have different resources we developed, including our crop planning resources. So these are online to download, and these ones can be fun for going through with your class to explore the different plants we've developed the guides for. And on the back, you can see it can be an activity you take your classes through in thinking about, like, why would you plant a seed a certain depth, and why would you spread plants apart? Which, of course, if you planted with kids, can be a good point to have to keep reinforcing, because they want to plant all the plants and seeds super close together. I do this as well as a grower. So yeah, those we found can be really fun.
Yeah,
And
the ones highlighted on the screen are the spring harvest, but there also is a set for fall harvest and a set specifically for seed saving as well that has a whole array of different crops for both of those.
yeah, and the seed saving seed saving ones they're developed with Farm Folk City Folk, which is another phenomenal resource who have these bite-sized seed saving lessons as well. That if you look up Farm Folk City Folk bite-sized lessons, I would highly recommend exploring those too. Oh, thanks for answering, Marcus. Yeah, so that's another thing, is we do also have the when to seed kind of growing guides that we've developed that are more school specific, kind of similar to like the West Coast Seeds Guide. I don't know if you've seen those for regional growing charts. And so the regional growing charts, we have one for the north and in the central, and then on the coast as well. And then the hands-on food. Oh, Megan has an example right there.
Yeah, we don't have a visual slide for it, but this is the coastal crop planning chart. So
we've essentially kind of shifted maybe when you'd want to seed something so that the harvest might be a little bit later when you come back to school, or earlier, so try to get it in before the June.
Yeah, so the crop cards are not region specific, general information, but those paired with kind of adjusting according to these sorts of charts can be really helpful. So there's a coastal, interior, and northern version of this on our website.
Yeah, and the slide up here for the hands-on food website, this is an amazing website that's more focused on when you're cooking and processing the food with the students inside the school. So there's a lot of different resources that as you can see here, for Cook It, Preserve It, Grow It, Don't Waste It. So there's lesson plans, and the lesson plans were developed with and for educators, so they've been tested. So a lot of educators really loved this website for that hands-on food engagement. And just to highlight a few key pieces of information before we head out this afternoon is the grant applications are due on the 22nd at 11:59. So yeah, feel free to request the phone Zoom applications, and that the deadline for those requests are November 8th. And if you have any questions, big or small, would like to chat, yeah, please reach out to us at the email that Madison just popped again in the chat there. And the slides from this presentation, as well as the recording, will be up on the website next week to watch again, to access, and to share out further. And then last but not least, there's other ways that you can connect with us and our team. So we have newsletters. So we have our provincial newsletter, and each different region has its own newsletter that are more regionally specific. And these are updates of really exciting upcoming opportunities and funding, and also always highlight on the ground action that's taking place. That's always really fun and inspiring to read. We also have our social media accounts. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we have a YouTube channel that is full of great webinars that have taken place over all the years, and some with a lot of amazing partners. So it's also a great place to explore.
Awesome. Jackson,
So,
yes, we are recording the webinar, and it will be sent out after, as well as being posted on the website. I see Madison has all the social links there. But I think that is all we've got for everyone. So I think Ro and I can stay on for a couple minutes if there's anyone that has a specific question about their project or anything that just came up at the last second here. But other than that, I think we're free to let everyone go a couple minutes early.
And sorry, Lisa, I also just see you put a new question there. Is a private/independent school considered to be in the school district that surrounds it? It can vary, but we fund private and independent schools outside of school districts. The school doesn't need to be a part of a school district. So if it's a registered independent private school that's serving a K-12 population, then you'll be eligible within BC. But if you would want to again just reach out and share specifically the school in mind, then we can definitely verify the eligibility.
Yeah, or Lisa, if you're also asking just for generally connecting with us, yes, the regional coordinator that served whatever school districts were in your region would also be the same team member that we would connect you with for an independent school in that region. Awesome. See, lots of thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
And have a great afternoon.